Handcuffs dangled from Captain Brock Halloway's belt, swinging like a silver pendulum of doom, inches from Dr. Regina Sterling's face. He stood in the aisle of the first-class cabin, chest puffed out, convinced he was removing a stubborn, disruptive passenger to restore order for the wealthy woman demanding Regina's seat. Halloway thought he was the ultimate authority at 30,000 feet. He thought he was protecting the integrity of his flight. What the captain didn't know was that the woman he was threatening to drag off the tarmac didn't just pay for a ticket. She owned the holding company that leased him his aircraft. By the time this flight lands, one of them will be a hero, and the other will be unemployable. And it is certainly not who you think. The rain at O'Hare International Airport was relentless, drumming a frantic rhythm against the glass walls of Terminal 3. But inside the exclusive lounge, the chaos of the storm felt a world away. Dr. Regina Sterling sat in a high-back leather chair, sipping sparkling water with a slice of lime. She was exhausted. At 42, Regina was the epitome of quiet power. She wore a simple charcoal-grey cashmere tracksuit and pristine white sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun, and her face was bare of makeup, save for a touch of lip balm. To the untrained eye, she looked like a tired mother or perhaps a student traveling on a budget. There were no flashing diamonds, no logos on her chest, and her luggage, a battered, nondescript carry-on, sat humbly by her feet. She checked her watch. It was a Patek Philippe, but she wore the face on the inside of her wrist, hidden from view. Flight 492 to London Heathrow is now boarding Group 1, the announcer's voice chimed. Regina stood up, stretching her back. She had just finished a grueling 70-hour negotiation week in Chicago regarding the acquisition of a microprocessor firm. She wasn't just a CEO. She was the CEO of Orion Dynamics, a logistics and aerospace conglomerate that quietly ran the back end of half the shipping routes in the Northern Hemisphere. She just wanted to sleep. She walked to the gate, scanned her boarding pass, and walked down the jet bridge. The plane was a Boeing 777, the flagship of Aerolux Airways. Regina entered the cabin, greeted the flight attendant with a warm, tired smile, and found her seat. 1A, the prime spot. Total privacy, fully lie-flat, the best service. She stowed her bag and sat down, immediately popping in her noise-cancelling earbuds. She closed her eyes, ready to disconnect before the plane even pushed back. "Excuse me? Excuse me?" The voice was shrill, piercing through the noise cancellation like a drill. Regina opened one eye. Standing in the aisle was a woman who looked like she was wearing her entire net worth. She had a faux fur coat that was dripping wet, massive sunglasses, indoors, and a Louis Vuitton bag that she was wielding like a weapon. Behind her stood a frantic-looking personal assistant loaded down with hat boxes. "Can I help you?" Regina asked, her voice calm. "You are in my seat," the woman snapped, flapping a hand at Regina as if shooing a fly. "1A. I always sit in 1A. Regina sighed internally. "I believe you're mistaken, ma'am. My boarding pass says 1A. "That's impossible," the woman scoffed, turning to the flight attendant who was hovering nervously nearby. "Sarah, is it? Tell this person that she needs to move. I am Mrs. Beatrice van der Hoven. My husband, Tand, is Arthur van der Hoven, the plastic surgeon. We are Diamond Elite members." Sarah, the flight attendant, looked terrified. She was young, perhaps only a few months into the job. She looked at her tablet, then at Regina, then at Beatrice. "Mrs. van der Hoven," Sarah said softly. "I see your seat assignment here. You are in 2B. It's just across the aisle. It's the same seat configuration." "I don't want 2B," Beatrice shrieked, causing the entire first-class cabin to freeze. Businessmen stopped typing. A celebrity in row 3 lowered his sunglasses. "I want 1A. I specifically told my assistant to book 1A. If this woman is sitting here, it's clearly an upgrade error. Look at her." Beatrice's eyes raked over Regina's cashmere tracksuit. "She's clearly staff travel or a lottery winner. She doesn't belong in the bulkhead." Regina sat up straighter. The fatigue in her bones was suddenly replaced by a cold, sharp alertness. She removed her earbuds entirely. "Mrs. van der Hoven," Regina said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously smooth. "I paid full fare for this ticket. I am not staff, nor am I a lottery winner. I am a paying customer who would very much like to go to sleep. Please take your assigned seat." Beatrice turned a shade of crimson that clashed with her lipstick. "How dare you speak to me? Do you know who I am?" "I don't," Regina said, picking up her Kindle, "and I don't particularly care." Beatrice gasped. She turned to Sarah, gripping the poor girl's arm with manicured claws. "Get the purser. No, get the captain. Immediately. I will not be insulted by some hood rat in first class while I'm forced to sit in row 2. "Ma'am, please," Sarah pleaded. "The flight is full. We are about to close the doors." "I am not sitting down until she has moved to economy, where she belongs," Beatrice screamed. "Get the captain, now!" Regina didn't look up from her Kindle, but her knuckles were white. She knew how this went. She had seen it a dozen times. The bias, the assumption of incompetence, the assumption of poverty. Usually she let her assistant handle it. Today she was alone. And today she wasn't in the mood to move. 3 minutes later, the heavy thud of boots echoed on the cabin floor. Captain Brock Halloway emerged from the cockpit like a storm cloud. He was a man who looked like he had been cast by a Hollywood agency to play a pilot. Silver hair, square jaw, broad shoulders, and an air of arrogance so thick you could cut it with a knife. He had been flying for 30 years, and he missed the good old days where his word was law, and the passengers asked no questions. He adjusted his tie, his eyes immediately darting to Beatrice van der Hoven. He recognized the type. Wealthy, loud, likely to file a complaint that would annoy his union rep. Then he looked at Regina. He saw the hoodie. He saw the sneakers. He saw the skin color. His calculation was instantaneous and entirely wrong. "What seems to be the problem here?" Halloway boomed, his voice projecting to the back of business class. "Captain!" Beatrice cried out, playing the victim instantly. She pressed a hand to her chest. "Thank God. This woman, this squatter, is refusing to vacate my seat. I have a bad back. I need the bulkhead, and she is being incredibly aggressive. I feel threatened." Halloway turned his gaze to Regina. Regina didn't shrink. She met his gaze with a level, unblinking stare. "Ma'am," Halloway said, his tone dripping with condescension. "I need to see your boarding pass." Regina held out her phone. The screen clearly displayed, "Sterling, Regina, flight 492, seat 1A. Halloway glanced at it, then looked back at her. "There's obviously been a system glitch. Mrs. van der Hoven is a Diamond member. We prioritize our loyalty members." "I purchased this ticket 3 weeks ago," Regina said calmly. "First class, fully flexible, fully refundable. The price was $12,000. There is no glitch." "Listen to me," Halloway said, leaning in, invading her personal space. He lowered his voice, but it was a stage whisper meant to humiliate. "I don't know how you got up here. Maybe you used miles. Maybe you know a gate agent. But we have a paying customer who needs this seat. I'm going to need you to grab your things and move back to row 34. We have a middle seat open." The audacity hung in the air like toxic smoke. Regina slowly set her Kindle down. "Let me understand you correctly, Captain Halloway. You are asking a passenger with a valid first-class boarding pass to move to a middle seat in economy to accommodate another passenger simply because she is loud, and you assume I am not worthy of this seat. I am telling you to move for the safety and order of this flight," Halloway snapped. "You are causing a disturbance." "I haven't raised my voice once," Regina noted. "Mrs. van der Hoven has been screaming for 5 minutes." "Don't get smart with me, sweetheart," Halloway growled. The word sweetheart landed like a slap. "On this plane, I'm the law. I decide who is a security risk. And right now, Your refusal to follow crew instructions is making you a security risk." Beatrice smirked from the aisle, crossing her arms triumphantly. "I am not moving," Regina said, her voice made of steel. Halloway's face turned red. His ego was bruised, and in front of a full cabin, he felt his authority slipping. He couldn't let a woman like this show him up. "Sarah," Halloway barked at the flight attendant, "call the gate. Tell them we need a LEO, law enforcement officer, on board. We have a non-compliant passenger refusing to vacate." Sarah hesitated. "Captain, she has a valid ticket. Maybe we can offer Mrs. van der Hoven a voucher." "Do as I say," Halloway shouted. Sarah jumped and ran to the intercom. Halloway turned back to Regina, unclipping a pair of flex cuffs from his belt, standard issue for restraining unruly passengers, though usually used for drunks. He held them up, dangling them in her face. "Here is how this is going to go," Halloway said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You have 30 seconds to stand up and walk to row 34. If you don't, I will have the police drag you off this plane. You will be arrested for interfering with a flight crew, you will be placed on the no-fly list, and you will be banned from every airline in this alliance. You will be stranded in Chicago, and you will go to jail." He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of stale coffee. "Is this seat really worth a criminal record?" Regina looked at the cuffs. Then she looked at Halloway. She didn't blink. She didn't cry. She reached into her pocket. "He's got a weapon!" Beatrice shrieked, diving behind her husband's empty seat. Halloway flinched, hand going to his hip. Regina slowly pulled out a sleek, black, titanium card. It wasn't a credit card. It was an ID badge, but not an airline ID. It had a holographic chip and a simple gold logo, a stylized hawk encircling a globe. "Captain," Regina said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried the weight of a judge passing a sentence. "You are making a mistake that will cost you your pension. I suggest you go back to the cockpit, call Aerolux Operations Center, and give them my name. Regina Sterling." Halloway snatched the card from her hand, glanced at it, and laughed. He actually laughed. "A corporate ID? You think showing me your work badge scares me? I don't care if you work for the President of the United States." He threw the card back into her lap. "Time's up." He grabbed her arm. That was the moment the atmosphere in the cabin shifted from awkward to electric. Regina didn't struggle. She didn't fight back physically. She simply looked at where his hand touched her cashmere sleeve, then looked up at his eyes. "Remove your hand," she said. "Now." "Police are on the way," Halloway sneered, though he released her arm, unsettled by the absolute lack of fear in her eyes. "You're done." The sound of sirens wailed outside on the tarmac, blue lights flashing against the rain-streaked windows. Regina picked up her card and slid it back into her pocket. She picked up her phone. She didn't dial 911. She dialed a number from her favorites list, a number that very few people in the world had. "Hello?" A voice answered on the second ring. It was deep, groggy. It was 3 a.m. in London. "Arthur," Regina said into the phone, her eyes locked on Captain Halloway. "It's Regina. I'm sitting on the tarmac at O'Hare. Flight 492. I need you to listen very carefully, because your lead pilot is about to have me arrested, and I'm deciding whether to cancel the leasing contract for your entire 777 fleet effective immediately." Halloway froze. Beatrice stopped smirking. The name Arthur meant nothing to the passengers, but to Captain Halloway, Arthur was the first name of Arthur Pendleton, the CEO of Aerolux Airways, the man who signed his checks. "Who is this?" Halloway demanded, his voice cracking slightly. "Who are you talking to?" Regina ignored him. "Yes, Arthur. Captain Brock Halloway. He's standing right here. He just assaulted me. Yes, I'll hold." Regina pulled the phone away from her ear and held it out to the captain. "It's for you," she said. Captain Brock Halloway stared at the smartphone in his hand as if it were a live grenade. The screen was dark, save for the call timer ticking upward, 014, 015. For a split second, his arrogance tried to shield him. It's a bluff, he thought. She's using a voice changer. She's using one of those fake call apps. It was impossible that this woman in a hoodie, who looked like she shopped at a discount outlet, had the personal cell phone number of Arthur Pendleton, the CEO of Aerolux Airways. Arthur was a man who lived in a fortress in Kensington. He didn't take calls from passengers. "Take it," Regina said, her voice devoid of emotion. "He's waiting." Halloway raised the phone to his ear, his hand trembling slightly. He cleared his throat, preparing to dress down whoever was on the other end. "Who is this?" Halloway demanded, his voice gruff. "You are interfering with a flight crew. Identify yourself." There was a pause on the line, a silence so heavy it felt like the cabin pressure had dropped. Then a voice cut through the static, crisp, British, and icy cold. "Captain Halloway," the voice said, "this is Arthur Pendleton. I recognize your voice from the union negotiations last fall. Now would you be so kind as to explain to me why Dr. Sterling, my largest creditor, is calling me at 3 in the morning to tell me she is being threatened with arrest on my aircraft?" Halloway felt his stomach drop through the floor of the fuselage. He knew that voice. He had heard it at the annual shareholder meetings. He had heard it on the company-wide crisis calls during the pandemic. It was unmistakable. Mr. Pendleton," Halloway stammered. The blood drained from his face so fast it left him dizzy. "Sir, I didn't know. I mean, there's a passenger here refusing to move. Refusing to move." Pendleton's voice rose, sharp as a whip. "Brock, listen to me very closely. You are flying a Boeing 777-300ER, tail number N492AX. Do you know who owns that plane?" "Aerolux owns it, sir," Halloway said, his eyes darting nervously to the passengers watching him. Beatrice was tapping her foot, looking annoyed that he wasn't dragging Regina away yet. "No, Brock, we don't," Pendleton snapped. "We sold our fleet 3 years ago to avoid bankruptcy. We leased them back. We leased them from a holding company called Orion Dynamics. And do you know who the founder and majority shareholder of Orion Dynamics is?" Halloway looked down at Regina. She was back to reading her Kindle, utterly unbothered, sipping her water. "Dr. Regina Sterling," Pendleton said, saying the name like it was a holy scripture. "She owns the plane you are standing in. She owns the engines. She owns the seat you are trying to kick her out of. And more importantly, she holds $80 million of our corporate debt. If she decides to declare us in default of our goodwill clause, which you are currently violating, Aerolux ceases to exist by Monday morning. Do you understand me?" Halloway's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. He couldn't breathe. The air in the cabin felt hot, suffocating. He looked at the woman in 1A. She wasn't a passenger. She was his landlord. She was his boss's boss. Halloway choked. "Fix this," Pendleton hissed. "Fix this right now, or don't bother landing that plane. If she gets off that aircraft in handcuffs, you won't just be fired, Halloway. I will personally sue you for every penny of damages she inflicts on the airline. Put her back on." Halloway lowered the phone slowly. He felt like he was going to vomit. His 30-year career, his pension, his status, it was all hanging by a thread, held by the woman he had just called sweetheart. "Well?" Beatrice van der Hoven barked, stepping into the aisle again. "What did the supervisor say? Is she moving? The police are here. Look!" She pointed out the window. 2 squad cars had pulled up to the jet bridge stairs. The flashing blue lights illuminated the rain-slicked tarmac. Beatrice turned to the rest of the cabin, clapping her hands. "Finally! Justice! This is what happens when you don't know your place." Halloway handed the phone back to Regina with a shaking hand. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. "Dr. Sterling," Halloway whispered, his voice cracking. I had no idea." Regina took the phone. "Arthur, I'm going to put you on speaker. I want you to hear this next part. The police are boarding. I'm here, Regina. Pendleton's voice came from the phone, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. I am so incredibly sorry. Don't apologize yet, Arthur, Regina said calmly. The show is just starting. At that moment, the cabin door flew open. 2 officers from the Chicago Police Department stomped onto the plane, shaking rain off their yellow tactical jackets. Officer Miller was a tall, imposing man with a buzz cut, and Officer Zhang was sharper, scanning the cabin with practiced eyes. They were not smiling. An unruly passenger call at a busy airport during a storm was the last thing they wanted to deal with. Who called it in? Officer Miller asked, his hand resting near his belt. I did, Beatrice shouted before Holloway could speak. She rushed forward, practically shoving the flight attendant, Sarah, out of the way. Officer, thank God you're here. This woman, she pointed a long, manicured finger at Regina, is trespassing. She has assaulted the captain verbally. She is refusing to follow federal flight crew instructions, and she is threatening me. I want her arrested immediately. Officer Miller looked at Beatrice, then at Holloway, then at Regina. Regina remained seated. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't look frightened. She simply placed her phone, still connected to the CEO of the airline, on the cocktail table next to her. Captain, Officer Zhang said, turning to Holloway, is this accurate? Is this passenger a security threat? This was the moment, the pivot point. Holloway stood frozen. The sweat was trickling down his back. If he said yes, he would be arrested later for filing a false report, and the airline would crumble. If he said no, he would look like an incompetent fool in front of the police and the wealthy passengers he tried so hard to impress. But Beatrice didn't give him time to answer. Of course she's a threat, Beatrice shrieked. Look at her. She's clearly on drugs or mentally unstable. She thinks she owns the plane. She just handed the captain a phone, pretending to talk to the CEO. She's delusional. Take her away. Regina stood up then, slowly. She smoothed the front of her tracksuit. Officer Miller, Officer Zhang, Regina said. She read their nameplates quickly. My name is Dr. Regina Sterling. I am not intoxicated. I am not aggressive. And I am certainly not delusional. She's lying, Beatrice yelled. Check her bag. I bet she has a weapon. Ma'am, step back, Officer Miller warned Beatrice, his patience thinning. He turned to Holloway. Captain, I need a formal statement. Do you want this passenger removed? Holloway looked at Regina. Her eyes were hard as flint. Then he looked at the phone on the table. No, Holloway croaked. The cabin went silent. Beatrice's jaw dropped. Excuse me? Beatrice gasped. What did you say? I said no, Holloway said, louder this time, though his voice shook. There has been a misunderstanding. The passenger in 1A is not a threat. She has every right to be here. What are you talking about? Beatrice exploded. You just told me you were going to drag her off. You called the police. You said she was a security risk. I was wrong, Holloway said, staring at his boots. The humiliation was burning him alive. I made a mistake. You made a mistake? Beatrice laughed hysterically. You don't make mistakes. You are the captain. This woman has clearly threatened you. Officer, she probably has a bomb. She's blackmailing him. Do your job. Officer Zhang stepped forward, looking closely at Regina. Ma'am, do you have ID? I do, Regina said. She reached into her pocket again. Careful! Beatrice screamed. Regina pulled out her wallet and handed her driver's license and her global entry card to the officer. Then she pulled out the black titanium corporate card again. Officer, Regina said, I would also like you to speak to the gentleman on the speakerphone. That is Arthur Pendleton, CEO of Aerolux. Officer Zhang leaned down. Hello? Officer, Pendleton's voice boomed. This is Arthur Pendleton. I can verify Dr. Sterling's identity. I can also verify that if anyone is removed from this plane, it should be the captain for incompetence or the screaming woman in the aisle for disturbing the peace. Beatrice looked like she had been slapped with a wet fish. She looked from the phone to the captain. This is a trick, Beatrice whispered. "It's a recording." "It is not a trick, Mrs. van der Hoven," Regina said. She took a step towards the aisle. Regina looked at the captain. "Captain Halloway, perhaps you should explain to the police and Mrs. van der Hoven why you can't arrest me. Tell them about the lease." Halloway looked up, his eyes pleading for mercy. Regina gave him none. "Tell them," she commanded. "Dr. Sterling." Halloway gulped, addressing the cabin. "Dr. Sterling represents Orion Dynamics. She owns the holding company that leases this aircraft to our airline." A murmur rippled through the first-class cabin. The businessman in 3A lowered his glasses. The celebrity in 4F sat up. "She owns the plane?" someone whispered. "Essentially," Halloway admitted, defeated. "She is the owner of the aircraft." Regina turned her gaze to Beatrice. "I don't just sit in seat 1A, Mrs. van der Hoven. I approved the purchase order for the leather you are standing next to. I signed the contract for the engine maintenance that will keep you safe over the Atlantic, and I currently hold the financial fate of this entire airline in my portfolio." Regina took a step closer to Beatrice. The socialite shrank back, clutching her Louis Vuitton bag. "So," Regina continued, her voice dangerously low, "when I told you I wasn't moving, it wasn't because I was stubborn. It was because you are a guest in my house. And you have been a very, very rude guest." Beatrice's face crumpled. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had inverted. She wasn't fighting a hood rat anymore. She was fighting a billionaire. "But," Beatrice stammered, trying to salvage her pride, "but I'm a Diamond member. My husband is Arthur van der Hoven." Regina tilted her head. "Arthur van der Hoven, the plastic surgeon, based in the Gold Coast?" "Yes," Beatrice said, latching onto her husband's name like a life raft. "He is one of the most prominent surgeons in Chicago. We are very powerful people." Regina smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized the prey was already trapped. "Officer Miller," Regina said, turning to the policeman, "you can file a report saying the captain made an error in judgment. There is no threat. However," she paused, looking at Beatrice, "I believe there is a new issue." "What issue?" Officer Miller asked, confused but sensing the drama. Regina pulled out her phone again. She tapped the screen a few times. "I just accessed my asset management dashboard," Regina said casually. "It seems Orion Dynamics also has a healthcare investment division. We specialize in buying distressed medical debt and commercial property loans." She turned the screen to face Beatrice. "Does your husband practice at 4200 Lakeshore Drive?" Regina asked. Beatrice went pale. "Yes." "Why?" "Because," Regina said, her voice ringing with finality, "my firm bought the commercial mortgage for that building 3 months ago, and if I recall correctly, the Van der Hoven Clinic is 3 months behind on their payments. We were planning to offer a grace period." Regina tapped the screen. "Cancel grace period. Initiate foreclosure." "Oops," Regina said. "I think I just evicted your husband." Beatrice let out a strangled sound, half gasp, half sob. You can't do that," Beatrice shrieked. "I just did," Regina replied. "Now I believe you are the one causing a disturbance. You've delayed this flight by 20 minutes. You've harassed a passenger. You've wasted police resources." Regina looked at Captain Halloway. "Captain, since you were so eager to use those handcuffs earlier, I believe you have a disruptive passenger in the aisle who is refusing to take her assigned seat and is harassing the owner of the aircraft. What do you intend to do about it?" Halloway knew he had only one play left to save his job. He had to sacrifice Beatrice. He unclipped the handcuffs from his belt again. He looked at Beatrice, his face hard. "Mrs. van der Hoven," Halloway said, "I'm going to need you to grab your things." The air in the cabin was thick enough to choke on. Captain Brock Halloway stood with the handcuffs in his right hand, the cold steel catching the overhead LED lights. He looked at Beatrice van der Hoven, the woman he had been ready to defend with his career just 10 minutes ago. Now she was the anchor, dragging him down to the bottom of the ocean. "Mrs. van der Hoven," Halloway repeated, his voice devoid of the swagger he'd had earlier. It was hollow now, the voice of a man trying to survive. "You are disrupting a federal flight. You have delayed departure. You have harassed a priority passenger. I am ordering you to deplane." Beatrice stared at him, her mouth agape. Her brain couldn't process the reversal. In her world, money bought immunity. In her world, the loud voice won. She looked at Regina, who was calmly sipping her sparkling water again, as if she were watching a mildly interesting documentary on TV. You traitor!" Beatrice screeched, swinging her Louis Vuitton bag at Halloway. The heavy brass buckle connected with the captain's shoulder with a dull thud. That was the mistake that sealed her fate. "Assault!" Officer Miller barked. He moved with surprising speed for a man of his size. He stepped between Halloway and Beatrice, grabbing Beatrice's wrist in a grip that didn't allow for negotiation. "Get your hands off me!" Beatrice screamed, thrashing like a trapped animal. "Do you know who I am? I am a van der Hoven. I will sue the police department. I will have your badges." "Ma'am, you are under arrest for assault and interfering with a flight crew," Officer Miller said, spinning her around. Beatrice fought. She kicked out, her heel catching the edge of Regina's seat. Regina didn't flinch. She just watched. Halloway stepped back, rubbing his shoulder. He looked at the handcuffs in his own hand, then at the police officer's cuffs. He realized with a sickening jolt that he had almost used his cuffs on the woman who signed his paychecks. He quickly clipped them back onto his belt, trying to make them disappear. "Turn around," Officer Zhang commanded, assisting his partner. Beatrice was weeping now, angry, ugly tears of humiliated rage. "Arthur! Call Arthur!" she wailed to her assistant, who was cowering by the galley, clutching the hat boxes. "Tell him to fix this." The assistant, a timid girl named Chloe, looked at Regina. Regina met her eyes and gave a barely perceptible shake of her head. Chloe looked at her phone. She looked at her screaming boss. Then, in a moment of silent rebellion that had been building for years of abuse, Chloe slowly lowered her phone. She didn't dial. "Hands behind your back," Miller ordered. Click, click. The sound was final. The silver bracelets locked onto Beatrice's wrists, pinning her expensive faux fur coat against her body. "I am a Diamond member," Beatrice sobbed, her voice breaking as the reality set in. "You can't do this to a Diamond member." "You're right," Regina spoke up. Her voice cut through the sobbing. "You aren't a Diamond member anymore." Regina tapped her phone screen, which was still mirroring to the bulkhead screen via AirPlay, a feature she had insisted be installed on all Orion-leased jets. "I just spoke with the Customer Experience VP," Regina said. "Your status has been revoked, and you are effectively banned from Aerolux, Delta, Air France, and KLM. I believe Spirit Airlines still has seats available for tomorrow morning, though." A stifled laugh erupted from row 3. Beatrice whipped her head around, her mascara running down her cheeks in black rivulets. "Move," Officer Miller said, guiding her toward the door. The walk of shame was excruciating. Beatrice had to walk past the entire first-class cabin. Every passenger was awake now. Every phone was out. The little glowing screens were like a phalanx of judgment, recording every second of her downfall. "Get that camera out of my face," she spat at the celebrity in 4F. "World star," someone whispered from the business class section behind the curtain. As Beatrice was dragged past Regina's seat, she stopped. She dug her heels into the carpet. She looked at Regina with pure venom. "You ruined my life," Beatrice hissed, over a seat. "You ruined my life." Regina set her water down. She leaned forward, her face inches from Beatrice's. "I didn't ruin your life, Beatrice," Regina said softly. "You did. You saw a black woman in a hoodie, and you assumed I was trash. You saw a captain, and assumed he was your servant. You saw the world as something you owned." Regina paused, her eyes dark and deep. "I didn't take your house because of the seat. I took it because I looked up your husband's practice while you were screaming. He has 3 malpractice suits pending for botched surgeries on low-income patients. He cuts corners. He bullies people just like you. I didn't ruin your life. I just balanced the books." Beatrice's face went slack. The fight left her body. She looked small, old, and terrified. "Take her," Regina said to the officers. They hauled her off the jet bridge. The sound of her wailing faded into the distance, swallowed by the noise of the terminal. Silence returned to the cabin. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the terrified silence of a room full of people who realized there was a tiger sitting in seat 1A. Captain Halloway stood at the front of the cabin. He was sweating profusely. He looked at Regina. "Dr. Sterling," he began, his voice trembling. I will go to the cockpit and prepare for departure. We will make up the time in the air." "Captain," Regina said. She didn't look at him. She was looking out the window at the rain. "Yes, ma'am?" "Fly smooth," she said. "If I spill my water, we're going to have another conversation." Halloway swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. Smooth as glass." He practically ran to the cockpit. The door locked behind him. The flight to London was usually 6 hours and 40 minutes of routine boredom. For Captain Brock Halloway, it was 6 hours and 40 minutes of purgatory. Every dial in the cockpit seemed to be judging him. Every warning light made his heart skip a beat. His first officer, a younger man named David, who had heard the entire exchange through the open door, was staring at him with a mixture of pity and disbelief. "Is it true?" David asked quietly as they reached cruising altitude over Nova Scotia. "Does she really own the plane?" Halloway gripped the yoke, his knuckles white. "She owns the holding company. She owns the debt. She owns the soul of this airline, David." "Man," David whispered, "and you tried to cuff her." "Shut up," Halloway snapped. "Just monitor the fuel flow. If we hit turbulence, I want you to request a deviation immediately. I don't care if we have to fly to Greenland. Do not let this plane bump." Back in the cabin, the atmosphere was surreal. The flight attendants were moving with the precision of a bomb disposal unit. Sarah, the young attendant who had tried to help Regina earlier, brought the meal service. She approached seat 1A with trembling hands. "Dr. Sterling?" Sarah whispered. "I brought the menu. Can I get you anything?" Regina looked up from her Kindle. She saw the fear in the girl's eyes. It broke her heart slightly. This was the side effect of power. It created distance. "Sarah, please," Regina said, offering a warm, genuine smile. "You don't need to be afraid. You were the only one who tried to check the manifest. You did your job." Sarah let out a breath she seemed to have been holding since Chicago. I tried to tell him. "I know you did," Regina said, "and I won't forget that. What's your last name, Sarah?" "Jenkins, Mom." "Well, Sarah Jenkins," Regina said, "I think you're wasted on the Chicago-London route. My private aviation division is looking for flight managers. Better pay, better hours, and no one screams at you. Remind me when we land." Sarah's eyes widened. "Really?" "I don't say things I don't mean," Regina said. "Now I'll just have the soup, please. And maybe a glass of red wine." "The 82 Bordeaux, ma'am?" "That sounds perfect." While Regina ate, the rest of the first-class cabin walked on eggshells. The businessman in 3A, who had been loudly complaining about the delay earlier, was now typing furiously on his laptop, likely deleting any negative tweets he had posted about the airline. No one reclined their seats too fast. No one rang the call bell. Midway over the Atlantic, the cabin lights were dimmed. Regina couldn't sleep. The adrenaline of the confrontation had faded, leaving a bitter aftertaste. She didn't enjoy destroying people. She really didn't. She wanted to build things, supply chains, companies, futures. But she had learned the hard way that if you didn't check the bullies, they would burn your house down. She saw the cockpit door open. Captain Halloway stepped out. He had removed his jacket. He looked tired. He walked down the aisle, checking on the passengers, but his eyes were fixed on 1A. He stopped by her seat. He knelt down, putting himself at eye level with her, a submissive posture, a stark contrast to his looming stance earlier. "Dr. Sterling," he whispered. Regina turned her head. "Captain, I wanted to apologize," Halloway said. His voice was hoarse. "Properly. Not because you're the owner, but because I was wrong. I profiled you. I assumed." Regina studied his face. She saw the lines of age, the fatigue. She saw a man who had been the king of the sky for 30 years and had just realized the world had changed beneath his wings. "You didn't just assume, Captain," Regina said quietly. "You weaponized your authority. You were ready to take my freedom away because I didn't look like the passenger you wanted in this seat." "I know," Halloway said. "I've been flying since the Navy. I'm used to being the law. I forgot that the law is supposed to serve, not punish." "You have a pension, Captain?" Regina asked suddenly. Halloway flinched. "Yes, ma'am. 3 years from retirement." "And a family? Wife? 2 kids in college?" Regina looked out the window at the stars. The engines hummed, a sound of millions of dollars of machinery working in harmony. Machinery she owned. "I could fire you," Regina said. "I could have Arthur strip your wings. You'd lose the pension. The kids would lose their tuition." Halloway closed his eyes. He nodded. "I know, and I wouldn't blame you." "That would be the justice everyone expects," Regina mused. "But then I'm just another rich person crushing a worker, and you become a martyr to your friends, complaining about how woke culture got you fired." Halloway opened his eyes. He looked confused. "I'm not going to fire you, Brock," Regina said. Halloway slumped, bracing himself on the armrest. "Thank you, God, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Regina said, her voice sharpening. "I'm not firing you because that's the easy way out. Instead, you're going to work for it." "Anything," Halloway said. "I'm establishing a new scholarship program at the Aerolux Flight Academy," Regina said, "for minority pilots, women, people of color, kids from neighborhoods who think they can never sit in that cockpit." She turned to face him fully. "You are going to be the mentor-in-chief," she said. "You are going to spend your days off training them. You are going to mentor them, and you are going to learn from them. You are going to look at them until you stop seeing risks and start seeing pilots. Do we have a deal?" Halloway stared at her. It was a punishment, yes. It was forced labor. But it was also redemption. Halloway choked up. "I would be honored. Truly." "Good," Regina said. "Now go back to the front. I think we're starting our descent soon. And Brock?" "Yes, Doctor." "Sterling? That landing better be butter." Halloway cracked a small, genuine smile. "I'll do my best." He stood up and walked back to the cockpit. He walked a little lighter. The plane began to descend toward London Heathrow. The clouds parted, revealing the sprawling city lights below. Regina adjusted her seat to the upright position. She checked her phone. She had a text from Arthur Pendleton. Subject: update message. Police report filed in Chicago. Mrs. Vanderhoven has been released on bail, but faces felony charges. The video of her arrest has 4 million views on TikTok. Also, I've prepared the paperwork for the foreclosure on the clinic. Do you want to proceed? Regina looked at the text. She thought about Beatrice's face. She thought about Halloway's apology. She typed a reply. Proceed with the foreclosure, but convert the building. Turn it into a free community health clinic. Name it after Sarah Jenkins. She hit send. The wheels touched the runway. It was, as requested, smooth as butter. But the story wasn't over. As the plane taxied to the gate, Regina saw a black convoy of cars waiting on the tarmac. Not police cars, private security. And standing in front of them was a man she hadn't expected to see. It was Arthur Pendleton himself. He had come out to the tarmac in the rain, and next to him stood a woman in a sharp blazer holding a microphone. The press. Regina sighed. So much for a quiet arrival, she thought. She grabbed her bag, checked her hair in the reflection of the window, and prepared to face the world. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was the story. The cabin door of the Boeing 777 hissed open, breaking the seal that had contained the drama of the last 7 hours. The cool, damp air of London rushed in, smelling of jet fuel and wet pavement. It was a stark contrast to the recycled air of the cabin, a reminder that the real world, with real consequences, was waiting just down the stairs. Captain Brock Halloway stood by the cockpit door. He had his cap tucked under his arm, his silver hair perfectly in place, but his eyes were haunted. As Regina approached the exit, he didn't speak. He simply offered a sharp, humble salute. It wasn't the salute of a superior officer to a subordinate. It was a salute of respect to an adversary who had spared his life. Regina nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of their pact. She stepped out onto the mobile staircase. Below the tarmac was a theatre of flashing lights. A convoy of 3 black Range Rovers sat idling near the wing. Standing in the drizzle, flanked by 2 security guards holding umbrellas, was Arthur Pendleton. The CEO of Aerolux looked immaculate in a bespoke Savile Row suit, but Regina could see the tension in his jaw from 20 feet away. Next to him was a woman with a cameraman, Amelia Vance, a notorious investigative reporter for the London Chronicle. Regina descended the stairs, her sneakers making no sound on the metal. She felt the eyes of every ground crew member on her. The word had spread. The woman in the hoodie who owned the plane. "Regina," Arthur said as she reached the bottom step. He stepped forward, ignoring the umbrella holder, allowing the rain to hit his expensive suit. He extended a hand, then hesitated, unsure if she would take it. "I trust the rest of the flight was acceptable?" Regina shook his hand firmly. "The landing was excellent, Arthur. Captain Halloway is a capable pilot. He just needed a reminder of who he works for." "I heard," Arthur said, lowering his voice. "And the scholarship idea? You're serious?" "Dead serious," Regina said. "I expect the paperwork on my desk by Monday. If Halloway is going to keep his wings, he's going to use them to lift others up." Suddenly the cameraman's light blinded them. Amelia Vance thrust a microphone toward Regina. "Dr. Sterling," the reporter called out. Amelia Vance, London Chronicle. A video has surfaced from O'Hare Airport showing a prominent Chicago socialite being arrested after an altercation with you. The video has 11 million views in 6 hours. Critics are saying this exposes a deep class divide in luxury travel. "Do you have a comment?" Arthur stiffened. He moved to block the camera. "No comments. Dr. Sterling is tired," and Regina held up a hand. "It's fine, Arthur." She turned to the camera. She didn't fix her hair. She didn't hide the tired circles under her eyes. She looked directly into the lens. "The video doesn't show a class divide," Regina said, her voice clear and steady over the roar of a nearby engine. "It shows a character divide. It shows what happens when people mistake wealth for worth and loudness for authority." "Mrs. van der Hoeven claims she was targeted," the reporter pressed. Regina smiled, a ghost of a smile. Mrs. van der Hoeven was targeted by her own choices. And as for the fallout... Regina paused, looking at Arthur. "I believe there is some breaking news regarding her situation." Arthur cleared his throat, stepping into the frame. He knew he had to play his part in Regina's orchestra. "Yes," Arthur said. "Aerolux has officially banned Mrs. van der Hoeven for life. Furthermore, we have received word from Chicago. Her husband, Dr. Arthur van der Hoeven, has issued a public statement filing for divorce. He cites irreconcilable differences and damage to his professional reputation. It seems the foreclosure of his clinic was the final straw." The reporter's eyes widened. "Foreclosure? The clinic is being repurposed," Regina interjected smoothly. "It will reopen next month as the Sarah Jenkins Community Health Center. It will provide free care to the underinsured residents of Chicago, funded in part by the liquidation of the previous owner's assets." Regina leaned into the microphone. "That is the real story here. We took a moment of ugliness and turned it into a lifetime of help for people who actually need it." Now if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting." She turned and walked towards the lead Range Rover. The security detail opened the door. Arthur hurried after her. "Regina, wait. The debt. The 80 million in bonds you hold. Are we okay?" Regina paused with one foot in the car. She looked back at the CEO of the airline. "Arthur, you have a pilot who learned a lesson, a flight attendant who just got a promotion, and a new PR angle that makes you look like a champion of social justice. I'd say we're better than okay." "Thank you," Arthur breathed. "Just remember," Regina said, her eyes flashing one last time. "The next time a passenger in a hoodie sits in 1A, don't ask to see their ticket. Ask if they need a glass of water." "Understood," Arthur said. Regina slid into the leather seat. The heavy door thudded shut, sealing out the noise, the rain, and the chaos. "Where to, Dr. Sterling?" the driver asked. Regina leaned her head back and closed her eyes. She pictured Beatrice sitting in a holding cell. She pictured Halloway teaching a young kid from the South Side how to fly. She pictured Sarah Jenkins running her own cabin crew. The balance had been restored. "The Dorchester," Regina said softly. "And then, the world." The convoy pulled away, leaving the plane behind, a giant metal beast that had been tamed by the quietest voice in the room. In a world obsessed with status, symbols, and volume, it is easy to forget that true power often moves in silence. Captain Halloway and Beatrice van der Hoven made the fatal mistake of judging a book by its cover, assuming that a hoodie meant poverty, and that silence meant weakness. They learned the hard way that the person you attempt to humiliate might just be the person who signs your paycheck, or holds the mortgage to your life. Regina Sterling didn't just win a dispute over a seat. She dismantled a system of arrogance. She showed us that money is a tool, but character is the blueprint. While Beatrice lost her status, her marriage, and her freedom, Regina used the conflict to build a scholarship, save a career, and open a free hospital. The story reminds us that karma isn't just about revenge. It's about realignment. It's about ensuring that when the mighty fall, they land in a way that helps the humble rise. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and quiet power, please destroy that like button. It helps us share these stories with more people. What would you have done if you were in Regina's seat? Would you have fired the captain, or did she do the right thing by making him a mentor? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a landlord who tries to evict a tenant, only to realize the tenant is the judge presiding over his tax fraud case. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind, because you never know who you're talking to. See you in the next one.